The title of today's video is Embracing Change. It's one of the things that we have to do in order to have the entire world not just pass us by. As individuals, we have to recognize that change is coming. You can ignore it, you can wish it wasn't there, and you can hold on to past beliefs and past methods and ideologies and all these other things. And you'll be in trouble because the world is going to accept the change. They don't have the choice either. People who adopt that change earlier on will move ahead. And I know this because I have been one of those people who was slow at times to embrace change. As a matter of fact, there was a long time I really fought change. I did not want to give up my comfort zones. I liked the way things were going. And I, like maybe many of you would say, why do we need to change? Things are going pretty well. Well, the smart money is on the fact that change gives you even more and even better. It's not 100% foolproof. Sometimes change is a disaster. But no matter whether it is good or it is bad, we have to embrace it and try to go along with it. Now, we don't have to give up our really positive feelings, and we don't have to get rid of our experiences. We just have to learn how to adapt our experience, our mindset into new and different methods. I often talk to kids at our high school about life, about writing, about my past days playing sports there. And I often tell them how much more sophisticated they are. And I tell them, when some of us old timers are telling you how the good old days were the best old days, it may not necessarily be true. I'm not sure the good old days were better, but they were different. There's some things from the good old days I wish were here now. And a lot of the things that are here now, I wish existed in the good old days. So you see, it's just a combination. And that's what change is. Change is coming in so many ways, and we are better off when we put a combination of experiences and thoughts and practices into new methods and new ways of looking at things. And why am I talking about that today on a writing advice channel? Well, because we're going to embrace a lot of change here on the channel. For about a year now, we've been offering writing advice to indie authors and self-published authors. We've talked about the 7 books, they're here, and other copies of those books here, that I've written, and they're about to be joined by book 8 and book 9. So I am still very passionate about writing. I'm very happy to know that we have helped a few people over this last year to write better, to write more efficiently, and to maybe get rid of some frustrations that were present in their writing careers. I am not going to move completely away from that because we're going to talk about a lot of things that deal with writing. But we're going to have a much more focused slant on this channel toward business culture. The channel name is going to change. It's going to move from Sid Mickle Publications to Sid Mickle Consulting. Why are we doing that? Because I said I have a passion for the cultural side of business. And I have a great deal of experience in the cultural side of business because I once worked for the single greatest company in the entire world. And it's totally unknown. I did write a book about it, and it's just right up over my head. It's called Principles. And it was supposed to be the subject of my very first book, but as I started writing that book, I moved it to this book, A Backwards Glance. Long story that I've repeated a few times, and I won't do that here. But the change that we're going to make is going to open up an opportunity for me, I believe, to give advice on business culture that will be very helpful to a lot of people. I think it's a niche that needs attention. I think it's a niche that we will do well in. Hey, our writing advice channel hasn't done poorly, but it's not a big channel. We don't have huge views. We don't have huge sub count. And that's just fine. As I'm making videos about writing advice, I decided to make a video about the experience of writing my first book, A Backwards Glance. And I made that video, and it was titled, I Wrote a Book and Found Myself. Well, the thoughts that came from that video experience really stuck in my mind. Next thing you know, I'm writing a book about writing a book. The first book I wrote, A Backwards Glance, was so hugely important to me personally. It started off as a book about a great collection of stories. I anticipated having fun, recalling great people I knew, maybe some tough things, but mostly a pleasant stroll down memory lane with a lot of nostalgia. Turned out it was really the beginning of a tough self-examination. I realized a long time ago that I really have some serious self-esteem issues, low self-confidence, and a feeling of inferiority. And most of that is just purely self-induced. But it's a bit of an overwhelming thing when you can't control it. And what I did was I acted happy. I acted like a guy who nothing bothered. I acted like a tough guy, an emotionally tough guy. And I was pretending. I stopped writing the Civil War fictional book long enough to get this other book together. And what it has done is it opened my eyes to my review of how I was behaving originally and how I've behaved since then. I'm not perfect by any means. I still struggle with some of the same things that were bogging me down years and years ago. But I've learned how to fight them. One thing I've learned is to embrace that change in me. The change that only I can create, only I can drive. Nobody else can do that. Nobody else can really examine you and make you start seeing things in a different light. I've had a lot of people mentor me and they gave me some hints about it, but I'm the one who really saw it and made the changes. So that made me start thinking about our entire YouTube channel world. What was I offering advice about? What was I talking about? And was it the very best thing for me to discuss? I came to the conclusion that it wasn't. It's not something I want to push away. It's something I want to mix in with the idea of talking about a new niche, which is the cultural environment in any business, small to large. And I have experience with the very best culture I believe any company has ever had. And we're going to talk about the 7 principles that created that great culture and all the other complications and struggles and benefits that came to every employee. And I'm not talking about just the employees aside from the managers, because the managers drove this philosophy down and up. They policed themselves just like we policed ourselves as employees. We were, in fact, a really close-knit team who could say basically anything we wanted to, as long as it was respectful first and then professional. The other experience I bring along with this 40 years of my business career in sales management and consulting is that I have gone through the single, I think, worst business disaster in this country in the last 100 years. And that was in 1982, September 30th, as a matter of fact, 1982, when some maniac killed 7 people in Chicago with our product. Someone poisoned people with cyanide-laced Tylenol extra strength capsules. I worked for that company. I turn on the news and I see cops driving down the street in Chicago with bullhorns saying, "Throw away your Tylenol." Yeah, that got my attention. I had been with the company for 2 years, just relocated to Jacksonville, took over the biggest market in my district. I began to wonder if my 2-year career was about to end. I didn't know how we could come back. I was worried about my 3-month-old son and my wife and my marriage and my mortgage and every other aspect of my life and my career. Well, that company not only survived, we thrived in that environment shortly after we regrouped and we made the decision to totally open the doors, be 100% transparent. You want to examine something? Come on. You want to test something? Come on. Our doors are open. You need files, you need records? You just tell us what you want. That was something that I went through, and a lot of other things we're going to talk about. And it was the probably best example of a company just laying themselves on the line and saying, we didn't do this, and we're going to show you why you should believe that. We came back, regained our market share, and moved our market share higher shortly after that. Those are a couple of examples. I've got an awful lot of stories, examples, suggestions, and absolute rules I'm going to pass along to you that I think will help your company, will help your view of the cultural environment of your work. One of the things that you may not be able to do is you may not be able to change the culture of your company where you work. You might, but you might not. But you can change you. You can change what you do in that environment. You can make the decision to leave that environment, or you can make the decision to try to alter that environment in your part of that company. There's a lot of ways we can look at that, and we will. I hope you'll come along because I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to examine some things that will be beneficial to most everyone who is out there participating in a business culture or maybe thinking about starting a business and what kind of culture they're going to try to implement for that business. But until we do these things, I hope all of you will have a great week. Please go out and have some fun with your friends and family. It will be a very important part of your week. But until that time, everybody take care. We will see you again soon. Bye-bye.